Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, December 23rd. A lot to talk about this morning. First of all, we have a potential severe weather event coming to the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S. later tomorrow night into the early morning hours on Friday. Of course, tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and we're talking about the night of Christmas Eve into early Christmas morning. The likelihood for some heavy rainfall ahead of a powerful cold frontal system that will be barreling towards the eastern seaboard later tomorrow night, and the potential exists for some damaging wind gusts in the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. that unfortunately raises the prospects for some power outages later tomorrow night into the early morning on Friday. The heavy rainfall combined with some melting snow in areas north of the Mason-Dixon line also raises the prospects for some flooding conditions, localized flooding conditions tomorrow night into the early morning hours on Friday. During Friday itself, Christmas Day, colder air will flood into the mid-Atlantic region of the northeast U.S. Temperatures will drop rapidly. Have to watch out for some quick icing of some leftover standing waters on untreated road surfaces, for example, early in the day on Friday. Temperatures will drop from early day highs, probably in the 40s, early Friday morning to the 20s by later in the afternoon. That cold air mass sticks around as we begin the upcoming weekend, and high temperatures in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor on Saturday will struggle to reach the freezing mark. Let's first focus in on this potential severe weather event tomorrow night in terms of damaging wind gusts. This is a forecast map from the 00Z run of the NAM model, the 12-kilometer version of the NAM model. And just take a look at some of these wind gusts forecasted for this upcoming event. First of all, 50 plus mile per hour in the D.C. metro area, 60 plus mile per hour in the Philadelphia metro region, and 70 plus mile per hour wind gusts all along the coast from Long Island down to the Delmarva Peninsula. We will see in a moment here the low-level winds at 850 millibars, a couple thousand feet off the ground, will be very, very strong later tomorrow night into early Friday. From a south to southeasterly direction, won't take much in terms of mixing to get some of those low-level winds down to the ground level, maybe in a possible thunderstorm, for example. And that raises the prospect for some of these excessive wind gusts as forecasted here by the NAM model from last night, and unfortunately raises the prospect for some power outages tomorrow night into early Friday in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. Well, let's now focus in on the 500 millibar vorticity field as forecasted by the NAM model from last night, the 6Z run. This is beginning with the Thursday morning, tomorrow morning forecast map. And one thing I want to point out right here, there's kind of a stretched area of energy on the front side of this upper level trough, and notice this wave of energy on the back side. This frontal system and associated low pressure area kind of will take on a different format from today versus late tomorrow. Today, it's an all-out snowstorm up across the upper part of the Midwest, places like Minnesota receiving significant snowfall today. But as this upper level feature rounds the bend, it'll go all the way down to the southern part of this upper level trough and then round the bend. It'll set off the development of a low pressure later tomorrow over the Tennessee Valley region that cuts up west of I-95 across central Pennsylvania into central New York by late tomorrow night. That secondary low pressure system along the frontal boundary zone enhances the rainfall on the front side later tomorrow night, and also enhances a chance for damaging wind gusts and, of course, the potential for some power outages. So let's move forward here. Again, this is beginning with Thursday morning, tomorrow morning forecast map. And here comes that wave of energy dropping to the south and east. And you'll see by tomorrow evening, it's starting to kind of round the bend, sets off the development of low pressure over the Tennessee Valley that will just ride this jet stream up across central Pennsylvania into central New York. And a lot of Gulf moisture will get involved with this system by tomorrow as well in the eastern third of the nation, raising the chances for some significant rainfall amounts. Let's keep moving forward. and this cold front comes barreling to the eastern seaboard by early Friday. Temperatures will drop rapidly on Friday, likely starting the day in the I-95 corridor region. I mean in the wee hours of the morning on Friday, up in the 40s, and then ending the day on Friday, Christmas afternoon, in the 20s, and that cold air will stick around for the upcoming part of the weekend. Let's go a little bit farther in time, and here we are by Friday evening. All of this sitting on top of the Mid-Atlantic region, and it pulls out of here by the start of the upcoming weekend. This is the Saturday morning forecast map. Then we'll watch the movement of this wave over the upcoming weekend. It could have an effect on the northeast U.S. early next week. Well, let's now focus in on the low-level winds. The low-level jet stream at 850 millibars, a couple thousand feet off the surface. This is from the 6Z run of the NAM model, and it begins again with a Thursday morning, tomorrow morning forecast map. These wind barbs right here, when they're filled in, that represents 50 knots. Just a normal line, as we see here, represents 10 knots. So if you see 3 lines, that represents a 30 knot wind. If you see a filled in barb like this plus 1 line, that's a 60, 50 plus 10, 60 knot wind. Bottom line, very, very strong winds at 850 millibars as we begin the day on Thursday. Again, from a southerly direction, maybe a southeasterly direction at the surface. And this just intensifies during the day tomorrow. Here's the forecast map for early tomorrow night, 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. A screaming low-level jet in the eastern third of the nation, really along the eastern seaboard. Again, that leads credence to that forecast map we saw at the onset of this video discussion of the peak wind gusts of up to 70 plus miles per hour along the coast, 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts at inland locations, unfortunately raising the chances for some power outages. Let's keep moving forward here, and that translates to the eastern seaboard, the northeast U.S. New England area by early Friday morning, and then things calm down during the day on Friday as all of it pushes off. This is finally looking at the forecast map for Saturday morning. Much, much calmer conditions, but any damage will have been done by this particular time. Again, the real-time concern tomorrow night into early Friday. Well, let's now walk through the surface forecast maps from last night's 6Z NAM run. This is the 12-kilometer version. Now we're starting with this morning's forecast map, Wednesday morning here. And again, we talked about a snowstorm today up across the upper part of the Midwest. And notice the isobar pattern here. We have high pressure sitting right on top of the Mid-Atlantic region, low pressure out over the Midwest. Winds blow clockwise around highs and counterclockwise around lows, and that is promoting this kind of a flow right here. Gulf moisture will get involved with this particular system over the next 12 to 24 hours or so as winds blow clockwise around highs and counterclockwise around lows. And so that is your moisture feed leading to the flood watches for much of the northeast U.S. On Thursday, and especially Thursday night into early Friday. Let's now move forward here and watch what happens again. Several inches of snow from the Dakotas to Minnesota associated with this particular wave of low pressure. And again, remember I said kind of takes on a different format, basically a synoptic scale snowstorm today in the upper Midwest. But by tomorrow, another area of low pressure will form in the Tennessee Valley. And here we go, some signs already here of that Gulf moisture feeding in by late today as high pressure shifts off the eastern seaboard. This initial low pressure area pushes to the north and east into the southern part of Canada. And look at the increase of the rainfall amounts right here from the Gulf region all the way across the Tennessee Valley into the Ohio Valley. The initial wave, that is a snowstorm today for the upper Midwest, pushes across the western Great Lakes. Heavy influx of Gulf moisture on Thursday morning. Let's now move forward here. And here we have by early afternoon tomorrow, some of the rain starting to be heavy along that frontal boundary zone. Black lines here represent lines of equal pressure, isobars. The tighter those lines, the stronger the winds, and they tend to flow parallel to these isobars. In this particular case, this is a flow from the south, or perhaps a southeasterly direction, but from the south to the north here. Again, very strong wind gusts setting up for tomorrow night into early Friday morning in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast U.S. Let's keep moving forward here. Here's that low pressure area from that upper level wave, drops all the way down to the base of the upper level trough, swings around, sets off the development of this Tennessee Valley low by late tomorrow afternoon. And that is an important feature because it enhances the upward motion throughout this system right along the frontal boundary zone. It leads to a snowstorm in the Ohio Valley and excessive rainfall and strong winds ahead of the frontal system in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. And here we go by middle of the night tomorrow night, or let's say just before midnight, heavy rain breaks out across the I-95 corridor region into central Pennsylvania, just west of D.C. Accumulating snow. This is setting up for a pretty good accumulating snow event in places like West Virginia, eastern Ohio, Cleveland, and northeastern Ohio, western part of New York. And at the time we get heavy rain here in the I-95 corridor region, we get some significant snow across western Pennsylvania, southwestern New York, eastern Ohio. A line of thunderstorms can form. Thunderstorm is a possibility as well in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City tomorrow night into early Friday morning. In between the heavy rain and the heavy snow, there could be a little bit of a band of ice pellets in that transition area between the mild air ahead of the front and the cold air behind the front. All of that reaches the East Coast by early Friday morning. We're talking 4, 5, 6 a.m. on Christmas morning. That cold frontal system finally reaches the eastern seaboard. And this is the time where temperatures can drop rapidly. Let's say in the early morning on Christmas, Friday morning, D.C. temperatures plunging, Philadelphia, New York City temperatures plunging early Friday morning. And watch out for potential icy spots and any leftover standing water on untreated road surfaces. Winds will continue to be strong, but not nearly as strong as tomorrow night into the wee hours of the morning on Friday. They'll be breezy and noticeable on Friday, midday and afternoon, but nothing like what is coming tomorrow night. And then we move forward here, and that cold air really comes flooding in, temperatures dropping through the day in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, reaching probably the 20s by late in the afternoon, early evening, and it stays very cold as we begin the upcoming week. And this is the forecast map for Saturday morning. Saturday's highs in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City probably doing no better than the low to middle 30s, way below normal for this time of year. Well, let's kind of shift gears here and take a look ahead by looking at some teleconnection indices. And again, we talked yesterday about the strong likelihood for a stratosphere warming event. All of these signals right here that we'll show in the next couple of minutes is teleconnection indices and the stratosphere warming event that is underway right now over the polar region, leads to the idea that cold air outbreaks will continue well into the month of January in the central and eastern part of the U.S. and an energetic pattern will continue as well. First of all, Arctic oscillation. This is the neutral line right here, this horizontal black line. Black represents current observations and past observations, and the forecast is in red, and it generally stays in negative territory. We've talked before about a sustained negative Arctic oscillation and a sustained negative North Atlantic oscillation, which we'll show next, generally is correlated with cold air outbreaks that make their way from northern Canada into the central and eastern U.S. So that is still on the table here for the next couple of weeks. And here's the North Atlantic oscillation. Right now it's about neutral, but the forecast trend is certainly for downward over the next couple of weeks. Again, similar to its closely related cousin, the Arctic oscillation. Negative territory here suggests cold air masses can make their way into the central and eastern U.S. and it generally increases the chances for snow, and that is the what we're thinking right now for the next couple of weeks in the eastern part of the nation, Mid-Atlantic region, Northeast U.S. Well, one final teleconnection index I want to look at here, the PNA, Pacific North America. When this is in positive territory, that suggests high-level ridging along the west coast of the U.S., the west coast of Canada. And usually when you get high pressure ridging along those west coasts of North America, you get a downstream trough in the eastern part of the nation. So a positive PNA, as it is forecasted to be over the next couple of weeks, generally correlates with a negative AO, negative NAO, and suggests cold air outbreaks, perhaps a stormy pattern for the central and eastern U.S. Again, positive PNA, upper level ridging along the west coast of the U.S., the west coast of Canada, and we just saw a moment ago the temperature and pressure pattern across the North Atlantic, the Arctic, AO and NAO indices should also favor the idea of kind of downstream troughing in the eastern part of the U.S. So all three of these suggest it'll be quite an interesting weather pattern over the next couple of weeks. Well, one final set of maps I'd like to share this morning. Stratospheric warming event is looks like it's developing, and that tends to typically there's a polar vortex at the upper levels of the atmosphere sitting over the North Pole in this particular case, and occasionally during the winter season it is displaced either to the North America side of the pole, or in some cases to the Asian side of the North Pole. Some cases the polar vortex is kind of split up into several pieces, and typically when the polar vortex is displaced from the North Pole, it kind of sets off a chain of events that will transfer cold air over the poles to the mid-latitudes, perhaps into the U.S. and Canada on this side of the pole, or in some cases it'll shift polar cold air into the Asian continent here. So this is the temperature pattern at the highest part of the atmosphere right now, the stratosphere, 10 millibars. What we're looking at is kind of a view of the North Pole right here in the center of this particular map. The U.S. is down here, and at this current time we have a rather typical appearance here of a cold polar vortex. The upper part of the atmosphere is sitting not over the North Pole, but pretty close to it. But notice this right here. This is a warm spot in the upper part of the atmosphere that is starting to develop and starting to intensify. And watch what happens in a 10-day period as forecasted by the GFS model. It intensifies quite a bit. And this warming event tends to kind of push this polar vortex a little bit farther to the south into the U.S. And again, stratospheric warming event can certainly set off a chain of events that leads to cold air outbreaks, let's say into the central and eastern U.S. Over the weeks following this event. So this is suggestive that there could be some cold air outbreaks continuing well into the month of January for the central and eastern U.S. Of course, the details have to be ironed out as to where those cold air outbreaks will end up going. Sometimes they don't go all the way into the eastern U.S. They can end up going into the central U.S., but it just raises the prospects of additional cold air outbreaks into the U.S. going well into the month of January. And this is something we'll monitor certainly over the next week to two. So in the short term, watch out for a potential severe weather event tomorrow night into early Friday, with the possibility of excessive wind gusts and even some power outages ahead of a powerful cold frontal system that moves off the eastern seaboard by early Friday, and a much colder air mass floods the mid-Atlantic and Northeast on Christmas Day, and it stays cold right into the upcoming weekend. That's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.